Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Very excited to have you all joining us. Lars Peterson is our presenter, and I will turn it over to Lars in a moment, but I want to introduce myself quickly. I'm Johanna Dunleavy, the Wellness and Marketing Manager at Employee and Family Resources, and I'll be the moderator for the webinar today. I want to share a few housekeeping items with you before we get started. The first is that if you have any questions come up, please use the chat function. In this particular platform, there is not a way for you to speak up during the webinar, so you can use the chat and I'll make sure to moderate that and answer any questions that you have or save them for Lars at the very end. For the sake of time, we have 1 hour today, so I will facilitate a Q&A at the very end, but as you have questions, kind of come up as he is presenting, please drop them in the chat and we will get to them at the very end of the presentation. We are using Kahoot. Kahoot is a really fun way to engage in a virtual environment. So Lars has several questions that he's going to ask, and Kahoot is a fun way for you to engage with your fellow webinar attendees and kind of learn from each other and give Lars some feedback on this topic of psychological safety in the workplace. So if you notice there at the top, there's a game pin 6446746 alongside a QR code. So you can scan that QR code with a smartphone and then you'll be prompted to enter that game pin. You can join at the website www.kahoot.it, or you can download the Kahoot app. So we'll make sure everyone has an opportunity to do that. Participating in Kahoot is completely voluntary, though like I said, it is a fun way to connect with your fellow webinar attendees and also with Lars. And without further ado, I will introduce Lars. Lars Peterson has been facilitating webinars for EFR since 2020 when we started our monthly webinar series, and we've had a long-standing relationship with Lars prior to that. He is a licensed psychotherapist in private practice, but prior to this career, he has worked in businesses. He has been a consultant to family businesses and other organizations on ownership and management transition issues, conflict resolution and family harmony, leadership development, effective communication, and general business management consulting. Lars has served as a trainer and webinar facilitator for EFR for quite some time, and we're always happy to have him and his expertise shared with our clients. So I'm going to turn it over to Lars, and he's going to share information about psychological safety in the workplace. And at the end, I'm going to share information about a new benefit offering that we have here at EFR. Lars, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks very much, Johanna. I'm going to leave this screen up for just a minute in case people haven't snapped the QR code. And Kahoot has made an enhancement where if you use the QR code, you don't actually need the pin anymore. So they kind of keep improving it and keep moving it forward. The other thing about Kahoot is all the answers are anonymous. So even if you put your real name up here, it will not show. So I'm going to keep that up there for just a second while I talk about today's presentation, a little bit about the objectives. Then I'll just quickly go by those slides when we start. Today, we're going to be talking about what psychological safety is, why it matters, and actually what it's not. There's some misconceptions about it. It's gotten to be somewhat of a popular term. And with that, there's misconceptions. We're going to talk about the key components, four questions you can ask really within your teams. And I caught myself today because sometimes I say organization, but psychological safety is really a team concept, and we'll go into that in some depth. We're going to talk about the U.S. Surgeon General's report and the WHO's World Health Organization's reports and how they really serve as a foundation for what we'll be talking about today. And then why building employee resilience is so critical. And I will be asking for your involvement. I really do love Kahoot because I always learn from the participants. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what you share, your insights, your challenges. And it'll take just a quick moment to start. All right. And I've already talked about that, so we'll go right into the background. So the U.S. Surgeon General issued a report on mental health and well-being in the workplace. Some pretty interesting statistics in this report. One was that average full-time workers spend more than half of their waking hours at work. I think that's really interesting when you put it together with research from UKG, an international company, that found that workers reported their manager's impact on their mental health was more important than anyone in their life but a spouse or partner. I think, again, because we spend a lot of time at work. 81% of respondents stated they will seek out employers who support mental health when they seek a new job. What's interesting about this statistic is 30% said, well, actually 31% said that's extremely important to them when they look for a new job. And this trend is only increasing with younger and younger generations. And workplaces play an important role in shaping our mental and physical well-being. I think whenever I'm getting ready to do a webinar or some kind of a training, I guess because my antenna's out, like, you know, you buy a red car and you see red cars everywhere. My antennae have been out for really how this workplaces do play this role. And I can think of 3 people. I'll only mention 2 of them. One, all striking. Joe and Jane are the names I use for client names, so I never actually use a client name. So I apologize if there's any Joes or Janes out there. But Jane, who I've been working with for quite a while now, she made very good progress in psychotherapies, trauma, relationship issues, family issues, lots of different things. But she was kind of at a stuck place. And that's when she got really her first professional full-time job outside of some things she was doing within the family business. And it was really striking to her and to me, the changes. In this job, she felt appreciated, she felt seen. She was part of a team, she liked the people, they liked her, and we're going to talk about how important those things are. But it really kind of jump-started her growth again, and she was able to make some significant progress with that. And it struck me at the time, and it still strikes me how important that was. Another person I'm thinking about struggles with OCD, and she a while back got a full-time job, and in her case, this was a kind of a new endeavor. And I'm not going to, minimize what she still struggles with, because OCD can be very debilitating. But again, made a significant difference in her mood, in her engagement in life. So there really is, I really feel strongly that workplaces play such an important role in our overall well-being, whether we're struggling with mental health issues or not. So there's 5 key components in this report. We're going to cover each of these. I'm not going to read them off right now because we're going to go over each one. It's interesting, though, you'll see how they all tie into things like engagement, employee engagement, retention, attraction, productivity, which when we talk about psychological safety, which we will after we lay this kind of foundation, you'll see that as well. And this is the other thing that's I think striking is the right word. A healthy workforce is the foundation for thriving organizations and healthier communities. So we're going to see throughout how really paying attention to the well-being of team members helps the organization, which helps the communities. So it's a win-win-win. So the first one, protection from harm. It's the foundation, right? And I think all of us have had times where we weren't able to get adequate rest, and that obviously impacts us, impacts how well we think, take in information, maybe makes us irritable with coworkers. Support a focus on mental health. That was another piece of the report that was important. And that's backed up by a lot of research. I think one of the striking examples I've seen recently is from the Harvard Business Review, and employees who felt supported in their mental health actually stayed on the job longer, were more engaged, and they even experienced fewer mental health symptoms, less likely to underperform and miss work as well. So that when I first read that about, well, less symptoms, how can that be? You'd think if they had a really good relationship and there was trust there, they might report more. But then I remembered back to my 20s when I had panic attacks, probably 50 to 75. I didn't count them at the time, but there were a lot. And I remember being in supportive environments and my anxiety would ramp down, and I would be less likely to have panic attacks, or in environments where I thought I might be judged, or it felt kind of unsafe, psychologically unsafe. Again, we'll go into what that means in a few moments, but I was more likely to have anxiety and to have a panic attack. So I think it's true that symptoms can go down. And then obviously operationalizing DEIA policies and practices. So operationalizing is the key word, having them and then implementing them. Companies with ethnic and cultural diversity outperform other companies by 36% in profitability. Wow, that's a big number. What's interesting about that number is there's newer research that shows that unless there's psychological safety, that's not the case. That number's not there. So we'll talk about how that all ties together. Connections and community. So think about maybe a job that you've had, maybe it's a present one, maybe it's past, or just a team you've been on where you really felt like, boy, this feels good. I'm valued, I'm included in things. There's not these cliques where I'm left out. And just think about how important that is. And that's a really important piece to how people show up at work, having that sense. Again, think about a situation when you've been on a team and you really trusted the other people and you could talk to them. I have a client right now I'm working with, Jane, and different Jane, she really struggles at work to feel connected to the people on her team. It's a newer job for her, definitely a newer role in this job, and that's a source of stress for her. And there's some cliquishness and there's some people talking behind other people's backs, and it just makes it hard. So that trusted relationships is such a key element. And then collaboration and teamwork. Obviously, in today's increasingly complex environment, we need everyone's voice. So Better Up did some research that found a high sense of belonging is linked to a 56% increase in job performance, a 50% drop in turnover risk, and a 75% reduction in sick days. Let's say they got the research wrong. Somehow they didn't quite do it right, and it's only a 46% increase in job performance, a 40% job in turnover risk, a 50% reduction in sick days. Still, those statistics are really hard-hitting, really impactful, I think. Work-life harmony. So autonomy is one of the elements that came up as being really important. And again, I've been kind of on the lookout for this recently. I did a presentation on leadership, not this same presentation, but more generally on leadership. And I asked people, this was a medium-sized construction company, I asked them, describe the best leaders you've ever worked with. And it was a smaller group, but the majority of the leaders said autonomy was part of it. They said three things really that the majority of them shared: autonomy, clear goals, clear expectations. This is where we're going. You have some autonomy on how you get there, and I'm here if you need me or if you need support, questions, etc. Flexible and predictable schedules. If you've ever had an unpredictable schedule, on any work team that you've been on, you know how that's really hard to have good work-life harmony. Flexibility, obviously some jobs don't allow that. That's a given, but many do, and it can be a really impactful thing. I spent some time working at Iowa State University in the College of Business, and I experienced this firsthand. I had a job offer that would have meant I didn't have to drive every day to Ames. I took that to my boss. He says, you know what, we'll work something out. We'll be flexible and make this work for both of us. Within a year or so, I was promoted. I stayed at Iowa State for a number of years after that, and it made a big difference. So these things are important. Access to paid leave, and respecting boundaries between work and home. I want to talk about that one for just a moment. I've talked to, and maybe you've talked to, maybe you've been in this situation where a manager or someone that you reported to didn't respect those boundaries. In this case, the person I'm thinking of right now was expected to return phone calls or texts, non-urgent, that's the key, non-urgent, within hours on nights and weekends. So he could get an email at 8:30 at night, and he was expected to reply that night. But that's not respect for boundaries between work and home. Even sending an email or a text to someone on your team at 10 o'clock, again, this non-urgent, may send a message that, hey, maybe this isn't so important, this work-home thing. This, from the corporate executive board, people who feel they have a good work-life balance work 21% harder than their peers. So mattering at work, another key piece. Providing a living wage, that's a given, right? Building a culture of gratitude and recognition. As human beings, we crave that. You've probably seen statistics on how people need somewhere around 7 times as many appreciative comments as improvement or critical type feedback comments. We've seen that in research with kids, we've seen it in research with couples, and I think it applies to the workplace. We really crave that. Engaging workers in workplace decisions as much as possible, and this connecting individuals with organizational mission. Increasingly important. The research shows a trend that goes up in terms of how important that is to workers. In this, by McKinsey & Company, in this research, 70% of employees state that their sense of purpose in life is defined by their work. So you may be thinking to yourself, like I do, boy, that's high. That's maybe not the healthiest thing, but it is. It is true that many people seek purpose through their work. 62% in the study indicate they are seeking even more purpose from their work. And opportunities for growth. So we know that quality training, education, and mentoring help people do their job better. That's a given. Expose them to new ideas, new perspectives. Also, though, it helps people feel like they have some chances for advancement. That, you know, if I want to advance, there's something for me here. And that's that second point of clear and equitable paths for advancement. So maybe you've been on a team before where there was some favoritism. I've been on both sides. I've been the unfavorite and I've been the favorite. I think being the favorite was almost harder for me in many ways with coworkers, but either way, it's really hard on team cohesiveness, team morale. The other piece here, along with clear and equitable, is that there is a path. So I have a colleague who worked in a company, well qualified, he wanted to advance. In his case, though, he spoke up a little bit too much. He's challenged authority a little too much, and they didn't like that. And so he didn't have a path for advancement. And that's a piece of psychological safety that's really important that we'll be talking about in the next few slides. And obviously ensuring relevant and reciprocal feedback. We're going to be offering more in-depth training, and that's going to be an important piece of this. There's different ways, different timing, different just some nuances, and many of you already know this about how you do feedback. Cornerstone and Lighthouse research found that workers who do not have visibility into internal career opportunities are 61% more likely to have plans to quit their job. So as you think about these different pieces, the first question is going to be really about which one's most relevant for you as a company. And I'm going to go over each of those quickly. So in Kahoot, a couple of things. Reminder, it's anonymous. There will be a timer, and at least on the first question, the timer is not that important, so you can keep typing, but it's 60 seconds, so you don't have time to really give this a lot of thought. Just how's it strike you? What's resonant with you? And so these components are protection from harm. That includes being supportive of mental health and having DEIA policies in place and implemented. Connection and community. It's about relationships, belonging, collaboration, teamwork, being able to resolve conflict. Work-life harmony. Harmony is an interesting word. It means that maybe work overshadows now and then, or home life overshadows now and then, but there's a harmony between the two. They're not necessarily always in perfect balance, but there's a harmony. And within work-life harmony, employee autonomy, respect for work-life boundaries. Mattering at work, recognition and purpose, appreciation and purpose. And then opportunities for growth, the training, the mentoring, and having a clear advancement path. So which one of those is most relevant for you and your organization, and why? And if you're new to Kahoot now on Kahoot, this should show up. So protection from harm, collaboration, community, work-life harmony, mattering at work, opportunities for growth. And timer's almost there, keep on typing. As long as I don't actually advance to the next screen, even if I show the answers, your answer will still come in. So we'll see answers still coming in. And we'll look at some themes here. Won't be able to read each one. Okay, great, 18 answers, that's awesome. Connection, timing. So let's see if there are themes. There's really varies, right? Wow, it's they're all important, which we knew. That's what the report says. Recession, all kinds feel heard and support, work-life balance, separation workplace. So again, a lot of insight into these answers, and really, it really backs up what this report says in terms of each of these important. Growth. It's interesting how growth kind of comes across here this way. There's 4 growths, and obviously they try to cluster these together. But okay, very interesting. Part of this presentation really is about, okay, accidentally went too far there. Part of this presentation is really about self-awareness and self-reflection. So, but also seeing what your colleagues are thinking about. The WHO had guidelines on mental health in their report, and really addressing preventing mental health conditions. So whatever they could do to prevent that, protecting and promoting mental health of all workers, but then if someone was struggling, addressing that and supporting that. And the quote chosen for the World Health Organization from this report is, a safe and healthy working environments are not only a fundamental right, but are also more likely to minimize tension and conflicts at work while improving staff retention, work performance, and productivity. So a win-win. This isn't, and we're going to talk about this, this is not about not holding people accountable. It's not about focusing less on results. In fact, I would maintain that you can hold people more accountable when you do it in a skillful manner rather than a harsh, punitive manner. Oh boy, this is, okay, we're gonna go back. It's not, I see what I'm doing there. Once you get ahead of the curve with Kahoot, it's a little hard to get back into the swing, but we're there. So here's really a premise for today's presentation. For most organizations, today's work, and think about if this is true for yours, work requires, not just nice to have, but requires innovation, problem solving, resourcefulness, new approaches, trust, and teamwork. So what's really important is this makes each person's voice critical. If 70% of the people on the team are speaking up and 30% aren't, it's hard to make good decisions. It's hard to have creativity and problem solving fully being in line and placed into the workforce. So that's the premise. And I'm going to just go ahead one and see. Okay, there we go. So psychological safety definitions. I'm going to give you two different definitions. Obviously, there's many definitions out there. Amy Edmondson, and I'll talk about Amy Edmondson and Gardner in just a minute, but she says it's an interpersonal climate in which individuals feel able to take interpersonal risks without fear of negative consequences. We see interpersonal twice there. We'll see it once in the next definition as well. So this is people to people. Psychological safety is an environment that encourages, recognizes, and rewards individuals for their contributions and ideas by making individuals feel safe when taking interpersonal risks. So Amy Edmondson, for those of you who don't know, is a professor at Harvard. She's won all kinds of accolades and awards, recognitions. She was recognized by HR Magazine in 2019 as the #1 significant thinker in human resources. And that's one of just many. She spent really her life studying psychological safety. Gardner Group is, and I'm going to have to think about this for a second. I guess they have 15,000, get the numbers right, 15,000 clients in a variety of countries throughout the world. Why I think it's interesting to consider Gardner is that they're talking about psychological safety with their clients. They're defining it, they're writing about it, they're educating about it. And if with 15,000 clients as a consulting organization, if this is that important for them to highlight it, I think it really tells us that psychological safety is not just a new flavor of the day or something that just came about. In fact, psychological safety as a thing has been around since the 1960s. Okay, so let's talk about a case study within Google. We know a little bit about what psychological safety is, that it's interpersonal piece about taking risks without being judged. We're going to go into more depth with that. But in this case study, Google conducted 200+ interviews, so some really in-depth interviews looking at all kinds of attributes of different teams. The #1 attribute to be a high, not happy, I put that in and crossed it out so we don't confuse this, high-performing team was psychological safety. What was this was the study, if you're interested, is Project Aristotle. And you can guess Google has some people that are pretty good at analytics. So this research was not shoddy research. #2 in the 5 most important attributes was not even close to #1. #1 being psychological safety. And this study really, I think, brought psychological safety to the forefront more so than some of the things in academia. There was a review of 185 articles published since 2013, so not going back into the 60s, 70s, and I don't think there was much research really until the 70s, 80s, then definitely in the 90s, but this was more current. And the review showed that psychological safety predicted outcomes ranging from greater creativity, higher incidences of error reporting, which is good, so you can correct things, and higher performance. And the actual article that I read to get this research said, in study after study, psychological safety predicted these outcomes. Now, there's another really important thing that came out of this study. Well, there's a number, but for our purposes today, psychological safety is a team concept. We're going to consider how important that is, but it's oftentimes looked at as like, oh, we have psychological safety or we don't at our organization. And unless your organization is, one team, it can vary and does vary. The research is very clear about that. It does vary. So let's talk about some questions that help us get a better sense of, is there psychological safety in my organization? Do team members experience a sense of being valued and included, right? We remember that from the previous slides, how important that is. Can team members ask questions without judgment? This includes nonverbal communication like eye rolls. So I did for a company that just had joined EFR and they wanted to see what kind of training was out there. I did a leadership, not this one, but a leadership training, kind of a overview of one of the webinars. And I went through each slide, but just not as much in depth. But we did talk a little bit about psychological safety and about body language and how judgment can be, but people are really good at spotting things like eye rolls or size or anything to do with body language. A superintendent was one of the people on the call. He was a leader of a lot of people. His takeaway was, you know what? I'm really good at not saying, well, that was a stupid question, but boy, I got to watch those eye rolls, or I've got to watch that body language. So nonverbal is a key piece here. Can team members bring forward ideas that are not fully formed or are a little bit outside the box? So I'm guessing some of you are like me. Sometimes my ideas aren't fully formed. I might have a good idea, but I just don't quite know how to take it to where it needs to go. And if people who are able to think like that, or maybe think from kind of out here, out in left field, but there could be some really good things within that thinking, if they're shut down, we lose all that creativity. So we want people to be able to bring their ideas forward. And can team members respectfully challenge authority? Obviously, respectfully is a key piece to this. Along with these four important questions, it's making mistakes. Can people on our team make mistakes? And there's different kinds of mistakes. There's mistakes where we all make mistakes, we're human. There's mistakes where at the time with what we knew, we did the best we could, and that was a mistake, and so we learned from that. And there's mistakes where we just violate policy or process, or just don't do what we know we should do. And that's a different level. So on those first two kinds of mistakes, are they learning opportunities, or are we always just kind of worried that, oh boy, if I make a mistake, I'm going to get called on the carpet, this is going to be bad. Obviously that impedes creativity and risk-taking. So think about a team in which people were hesitant to take risks, as I've been describing, especially interpersonal risks, worried about judgment. How did this impact the team? This could be a team that you've been on, that's a work team, it could be a civic team, a religious team, committee, whatever, but any kind of team where people were worried about, making mistakes, being judged, speaking up. How did that impact the team? Okay, we'll see what we have so far. My educated guess on the answers for this will be that there are some pretty significant impacts. People shut down, creativity is reduced, less ideas sharing, yeah. Guarded, again, that's why I love Kahoot. Something I hadn't thought of, but now that it's said, of course, yeah, more passive aggressive communication. When you're not as direct, people go, the meeting after the meeting, or triangulation. I'm going to talk to Jane about being mad at Joe. Stagnant, resentful, yeah, and then retention suffers, right? Creativity. Wow, so these are really striking. Stagnant came up again. lack of communication, didn't know what was happening behind the scenes, poor customer service. Wow, and hurt feelings. So it affected not only internally, it affected how we dealt with customers or clients. Being gold personality, working with orange personality people. So there can be some challenges when we have different personalities, especially when there's not safety. It's actually can be really helpful for teams to have those differences when there's safety. It's boring. Patrick Lencioni in the 5 dysfunctions of the team talks about when there's not conflict or when people don't have trust, things do get boring. Meetings are boring. Yes. Wow. Just went along with the leader said, even if they didn't agree. So yeah. Wow. Striking. So psychological, let's talk a little bit about what psychological safety is not, just to get that out of the way. It's not being nice, so you don't hurt feelings. Actually, and let me get this quote right from Esther Derby, psychological safety means that you feel comfortable with talking about things that are uncomfortable, right? But it's not about being nice, not derby. You can be direct, it should be direct, but you can be kind. Lacking accountability, no, it's not lacking accountability. I would maintain that when psychological safety is present, people hold themselves more accountable, and team members hold each other more accountable. Patrick Lencioni would back this up in his work as well. It's not consensus for all decisions. We know there's different kinds of decisions, and not everyone can be consensus. That's not it. What I want to spend just a second on unearned autonomy. So it's not just that, okay, we trust everyone, go out and do your thing. No, autonomy has to be earned. We have to know that person is good at exercising judgment, working on their own more independently. That has to be earned and always has to be earned. And obviously not as licensed to speak up at any time with any style. So now let's change it around a little bit. What's your experience of being on a team, any kind of team, with high psychological safety, where you felt like you could take risks, you weren't going to be judged, you could speak up? Work, civic, religious, sports, whatever team it is. What was that like for you? I think we'll see some very stark differences. So most mistakes were learning opportunities. You could ask questions. You could bring up different viewpoints that didn't agree. All those areas of psychological safety. Okay, well, it's going to be really interesting to see the differences here, because I think there will be stark, motivating about right off the bat. Yeah, wow, strong words, right? Motivating and empowering, confident, even if it's unpopular, and freedom to share both ideas and frustrations, rewarding. Paramedics work as a team. Yeah, you have to, but not every paramedic team works as a team, right? But apparently, maybe this person worked on one when it happened. And it's really important, right? Life-threatening not to. Forward movement on goals, okay. Super, okay, so here's this piece where if there's favorites being played, we're going to talk about having sound management practices in place. Such a core foundation of this all. So you can't work at making things safe, but then do all these other things that don't align with it. So thank you very much for bringing that one up. So I'm going to ask questions. My perspective. So wow, it'd be really, I can't do this. It'd be fascinating to share these side by side, because they are so different. So there's some challenges with psychological safety. I'm not going to cover these in depth. These will be covered more in depth in the training that is a possibility to engage in after this training. But power dynamics, and sometimes people aren't aware of how power dynamics play out, those in power typically, not always, of course. And that can play into cultural, this second bullet, cultural and language challenges. In some cultures, respect and deference is really, really important. In some, it's less important, and it's more important to actually be direct. So trying to navigate all of this in a way that ends up being psychologically safe. Perception gap. We know from research that there is a perception gap between leaders and people on teams. The perception gap varies. It can be huge or it can be very small, but there is a gap, right? And so one challenge is someone may say, oh, it's psychologically safe here. Everyone can ask questions. It's fine. Maybe it's not, okay? And that's why this variability among teams. I've done some presentations in which I didn't ask specifically about psychological safety, but the question really touched on it, and there was a lot of overlap. And within the same organization, it's been interesting to see how much variance there is among people, leaders, whether they're in HR or this role or operations or whatever role it is, quite a bit of variability. Here's the one though, failure is not seen. If I don't speak up at a key moment, how does anyone know that? That's what's really critical about this, unless we're asking people and they're willing to tell us that they're not speaking up, but if they're not speaking up, there's a reason. Is failure's not seen, and how pervasive that is. And that can be kind of like a rust that just kind of corrodes the organization. Potential growth strategies. So again, back into sound management practices. Clear roles and expectations, timely feedback, not playing favorites. Again, this is your role, these are expectations, this is feedback, this is how it happens. People are treated in a similar manner. Yes, just it's foundational. Less punitive approaches to performance, and again, I would maintain if these less punitive approaches are well designed, they can actually increase performance. We saw that in that answer about when there was low psychological safety. It's just low motivation and people feel beat down. Eliminating harassment, bullying, and discrimination. It's not right, number one, but it's never good for teams. Communicating in meetings and in one-to-one. So just really throughout the organization, making this something that is just part of what we do, and implementing practices that increase inclusion. So let's talk a little bit about another piece here, and that's resilience. Meaning if a couple definitions, again, looking up a definition of resilience, you'll have thousands of definitions that are slightly different. But basically effective coping and adaptation when faced with loss, hardship, and adversity. The person I met with this morning, Joe, was fired from a job, doesn't know why, still hasn't been told why. And there's a lot of things going on around all of that. Really hard to cope with, but he's doing whatever he can to be resilient, and that's why we're talking, is to increase his resilience. Maintaining physical and mental well-being while confronting stressors, setbacks, and changes. So this is rather than talking a lot about resilience, I'd like to know about your insights. How would your organization, how does it, if you have resilient employees, or how would it benefit if employees were even more resilient? This is one of my favorite photos that I was able to put in Kahoot, because these trees are resilient. They're not snapping in a high wind. They're flexible, adaptive. And in just a moment, we'll talk about psychological safety and resilience, because there definitely is a correlation or a relationship. All right, we'll see what we have here. This is going to be really interesting. Okay, I think this came from the last question, so maybe the timer expired before this one came in. They'd be better able to rebound from feedback, right? Because you need to give people on your team feedback. That's part of what helps them improve. But to be able to rebound from that or grow from that, work cohesively with other departments for the betterment of, wow, there's a very strong statement. Change happens because it's inevitable to be embraced. It is inevitable. You are exactly right. And the rate of change is growing, right? And the rate of complexity, uncertainty. In a culture of growth, a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. More risk and less turnover. Wow. Better problem solving, adaptive. So some significant benefits, right? Constructive. So these two are very, very much in alignment. All right, thank you. So let's talk about psychological safety and resilience. Examples of promoting. So holding or helping employees grow by doing hard things and supporting them when they fail. So people don't grow by staying in their comfort zones. They don't. And as one of the answers stated, things are constantly changing. Things don't stay the same. So if you can set things up so that there's more acute stress versus chronic stress. So acute stress is we work out really hard. There's acute stress within our muscles that we work, and then our muscles grow, right? Chronic stress leads to burnout, just brings us. So in a work situation, we can set it up so that people can grow and do hard things, and we can support them in doing that. We can appreciate uncomfortable questions, and we can let employees know that it's okay to struggle and ask for help, even with mental health. So we can be open and be approachable and do a lot of things to make it so that, as the answers showed, people are more willing to take risks. They're more willing to step outside their comfort zone. They don't feel this tentative, like if I do this and I mess this up. Obviously, there's guardrails. That's a given. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Johanna, but I will stay on and I will be available for questions.
Thank you, Lars, and thanks to everyone who participated in the Cahoots. I think that really added a lot to our conversation today. So I want to let you know about a new benefit that we are offering at Employee and Family Resources. It's called Well Working Workplaces, and this is a benefit designed to define, assess, and improve psychological safety in your workplace. We have created an assessment tool that will help identify gaps and areas for improvement. And we can also, from that information gathered in the assessment tool, customize plans and recommendations based on what your organization is reporting or what the teams in your organization is reporting. So lots of tools available through EFR to help improve psychological safety in the workplace. Lars will be part of that planning, and so if your organization were to engage with our assessment and then wanting to do some additional psychological safety trainings and workshops, then you will get to hear from Lars again, because he's a big part of us developing this plan. Go ahead and advance the slide, Lars, please.
You betcha.
So just to kind of go over the offerings, we have a workplace assessment that is at no cost. And after your workplace or the teams in your workplace take that assessment, we do have additional resources available, like a 4-hour manager workshop, manager coaching, and policy and culture consultation. So lots of great resources available to you after your workplace, or perhaps a team or several teams in your workplace take that workplace assessment. So the assessment is at no cost. That's something that you can engage with pretty quickly. And we do have information about this on our website. So if we go to the next slide, Lars, there is information about this on EFR.org. If you go to the How We Help menu at the top and hover over that, you'll see a drop down that takes you to work, and then you can navigate over to Well Working Workplaces. You could also email www.efr.org, and we will be in contact with you to provide more information, or you could even reach out to your account manager at Employee and Family Resources, and he or she could help you with the next steps. But lots of great resources. I would encourage you to visit the webpage because you can take a preliminary quiz just to get a feel for what that complimentary assessment is going to be like. And then there is some more information about the manager workshop, the manager coaching, and the policy, culture, and consultation available on the website. So please head over to the website and know that if you joined us today, you will be receiving an email follow-up communication that will also get you this information pretty quickly. So you will hear more from us on our Well Working Workplaces benefit, and the recording of this webinar will be placed on our website by the end of the day today. So if you want to share this with someone who is not able to join, or if you just want to go through it again, that recording will be available by the end of the business day today. Any questions? This would be a good time for anyone joining to ask questions of Lars or about the benefit, and we can get those answers to you before we all log off for the morning. While you're thinking about any questions you have, do we want to do one final Kahoot, Lars?
Yes, that'd be good.
Okay. So time to share one more time. Why is it important for you to help create a culture of psychological safety on your team and your organization? So go ahead and give us your final thoughts on this. Why is it important for you to help create a culture of psychological safety? As you're answering that question, if anything comes up that you want to ask Lars, just drop it in the chat and I will moderate a Q&A at the very end today.
All right, let's see what we have so far. Again, keep typing, it'll come in. Wow. Yeah, so this is kind of that win-win again, right? It's good for the employees, but it helps us perform better. Bring their whole selves to work. That's thank you for saying that. You know, Lars doesn't just leave anxious self at home and show up at work with fully professional self, right? We do bring our whole selves to work. Wow, yeah. Higher job satisfaction, increased job performance, greater sense of purpose. So some significant insight here. Anything you want to say about this, Johanna, or any questions that have come in?
I don't see any questions that have come in through the chat, but I love everything that people are sharing. I think there are definitely connecting dots between what you've shared earlier and how they can contribute to psychological safety in the workplace. I'm getting a lot of thank yous, however, so I also want to thank you, Lars, for all the time you spent preparing and the expertise you shared with our listeners today, and that you'll continue to share as our clients continue to engage with well-working workplaces, and you can deliver some services directly to clients in the future. Like I said, this recording will be on our website by the end of the day today, so you can look back at that and know that if you attended, you will receive an email from us with more information about well-working workplaces. Thank you, Lars, and thank you everyone for joining, and make it a great day.
All right, thanks again.
Bye-bye.